Hello and welcome to Sprite Guard Plays Hyper Rogue. This is a really interesting and unusual game that was actually one of the first games that I wanted to cover on this channel, but it's a very difficult game to cover because there's so much going on and there's so much to talk about, and it's a rather difficult game at the same time. So I've done a lot of takes of this, and none of them have really come out the way that I want them to. This game just got a Steam release fairly recently, and so I thought that that was a good occasion to give this another shot and see if I could make a good video about it, because I really like this game, and I wanted to share it with you. So the basic idea is we're going around in this world that has really unusual geometry, and we're trying to gather treasures. Right now I'm in the icy world, where I can actually melt my way through walls. There are different biomes that we have to visit, and our first goal is going to be to get 10 gems from each of the areas. And we'll have monsters attacking us, and we'll have to fight our way through stuff like this ivy, and there are going to be a lot of challenges on the way. So this game has very simple combat. It's all based on initiative. There's no health, there's no damage. It's just based on being able to move before your opponent and sort of having the initiative, and the only way you lose is by getting checkmated, which you will almost certainly see as I go through this. Playing this game and talking about it at the same time is quite difficult, so I don't know how far I will be able to get. These worm things are sandworms. They only move every other turn, but you can't actually fight them. You can only sort of lead them around and hope that you can escape them, or if you kind of lead them to some place where they can't move, then they will die and turn into spice, but it's very difficult, and so I usually choose to just run away from them, because you can't engage with them directly, and it's just too difficult to try to get them to wrap around themselves so that they can't move. So the geometry in this game is really weird, and I don't know if I can explain it, really do it justice. It's this kind of geometry called hyperbolic geometry that came out of some questions people had about Euclid and about whether or not his first principles that he started from were the most minimal first principles that you could start from. And in particular, he had one postulate about the way that parallel lines behave, that people were really questioning whether or not it was possible to derive it from the other first principles that he started from, and it turns out that you can't, that it's independent of the other principles, and so they were actually able to come up with geometries in which parallel lines behave in totally different ways compared to how they behave in ordinary Euclidean geometry. And so hyperbolic geometry behaves very differently in some ways that will begin to become more clear as we sort of make our way through the game world and see some of the different areas. And each of these biomes uses the geometry in a different way. So this biome, we have these kind of ivy things that grow, and we have to cut our way to the heart of them. And the way that they grow is a little bit different from the way that they might grow in ordinary Euclidean geometry, because straight lines don't quite work in the same way that they work in Euclidean geometry, and so you can have ivy kind of bending around in ways that you normally wouldn't expect. So we have 10 gems from this area, and we have 30 gems in total, which means we've unlocked some of the new areas. And so one of the things that was added for the Steam release was achievements, so that's what I just got there. I've already gotten most of the easy achievements for visiting all of the different areas. I haven't gotten to the last area, which is very difficult to get to. But I have managed to get to almost all of the areas and get 10 gems from each of them. And so I'm just going to be trying to get to some of the endgame content and show you as much of the content as I am able to. And we only need one more gem from this area, and so I want to try to make my way out of this area and find a different place and escape some of these running dogs. Now I can't fight them because the ground is constantly falling away as I make my way through this world. And so sometimes I can sort of trap these dogs that are chasing me and make it so that they can't follow me as easily, or make it so that they fall into the chasm, but I can't actually fight them directly unless we get to some place that has solid ground. And you might notice I have not come back on any of my trails that I've been leaving. This is because the way in which the world sort of spreads out away from us actually ends up making it so that it's very, very difficult to wander around randomly and end up someplace that you were, someplace you have been before. Wandering around randomly, the odds of ending up someplace that you've been before very, very low. So this is the Alchemy Lab that I've gone into, and it's one of the more interesting starting areas. Basically what's happening is we're confined to one color, and the only way to change color is by killing those slime monsters that were chasing us. And those will color all of the tiles around them, whatever color they are when they die, and so they will also color the tile that you're on, and so that lets you change what color you're moving around on. But otherwise, we're confined to a single color. In Euclidean geometry, this would make it very difficult to get anything done, because we'd have a lot of dead ends and a lot of islands. But in hyperbolic geometry, it's actually much easier to find paths that are connected and get around. Even though this is a tessellation that does not have any cutting points. And so these are kind of separated paths that we're following. And they really divide up the world, but they still divide up the world in a way that lets us travel very far and explore a lot of stuff. Now I want to be careful here that I don't get checkmated, and also that I don't kill a monster while it's next to one of the gems, because I don't want to... I'm in rather a lot of trouble now, and I'm not sure I can get out of it. But let's see, I want to take this a little bit carefully and a little bit tactically. Now, these choke points are often very useful, but the problem is they're much less useful in this area because you get slime monsters of other kinds. Now here's an orb of speed, which will let me escape a little bit more effectively, because it will let me move twice as fast as everything else. And I believe if I kill this slime monster here, that will let me get out and into the Crossroads. So the Crossroads is an area where there are no monsters native to this area, and there are no gems in this area, but you can pick up orbs, and more orbs will start dropping in this area. So what do we need? We still need to visit the forest, the caves, the mirrored land, and it looks like we've already unlocked Relief. So that's someplace that we want to go. The forest is one of the more difficult areas, but also one of the more interesting ones. It's very crowded, but you can cut through trees. And the monsters here, you actually have to, instead of attacking them directly, you have to move next to them. And so you need a certain amount of maneuvering area, which is sometimes difficult to find in the forest. So you have to be a bit more careful and sort of plan out your attacks. Some of these trees cut down in a single hit, some of them you have to take some time to cut them down. And then these fire fairies will actually start fires that will burn through the rest of the forest very quickly. And so I have to get out of here before the whole forest burns down. And let's see, I have 3 of the treasures from this area, so I don't really want to leave yet. But with the fire coming up behind me and this fire fairy, I'm becoming a little bit worried, and so I'm going to attack this fire fairy. And the trees will catch fire right away, and then the grass will catch fire gradually, more slowly. So I really have to move quickly if I want to stay ahead of the fires. And hopefully we will find a path that will let us get ahead of the fires. And I think we are starting to make some progress. It's starting to recede into the distance. The world is very, very large. It's infinite, but it's kind of more than infinite. Because of some of the stuff that I talked about previously about how it's very difficult to get back someplace. Now I'm getting very choked in, and I may have actually hit a point where I am not able to escape. So this may be the end of the game. The only place that I can move is here, and yeah, that's a game over. So I got 72 gems, I killed 71 enemies. I want to restart because there's still a lot of this game that I want to show you, especially in this first episode. And here's actually one of the areas that I want to show you, is the Living Caves. And it's one of the starting areas, and it's one of the areas that kind of uses the geometry to its advantage. It's this sort of garden of forking paths that we go through, and the walls will actually grow and move around based on sort of simple rules like cellular automaton, and so the walls kind of move around, and that actually becomes very dangerous when we get to some of the more challenging monsters in this area. And hopefully we will run into one of those and I can show you what it does. So this world starts out as sort of just these forking paths, but because of the geometry, they actually end up forking a lot more, in a lot more directions than they would otherwise. So here I can show you, if I kill one of these rock trolls, it will actually turn into a wall, and the walls will sort of close in. And so I want to get out of here as quickly as possible. I have gotten trapped that way, and so it's a real danger. And now that we've done that, I will head out into the world a little bit more and just try to collect some gems and unlock some of the later areas. Melt my way through the wall before I try to walk through it. And it looks like we still have a rock troll chasing after us. So we may have to fight that, or we may be able to escape it. Kind of depends on how much it wants to chase after it, and it looks like we're going to have to fight it. And those dead troll corpses will just stay there perpetually, but because of the geometry, we're very unlikely to run into that corpse again. Now these orb things are very useful for getting out of tight situations. You can carry them around, but the next time I attack something will actually be when this orb of flash goes off. And that will just do an area of effect that heats up the area around it, melts ice, and will kill everything in its area of effect. This is a bonfire. One nice thing about this version is you can actually right-click to get little tips about the different things that you encounter in the world, and so it will explain some of the subtler mechanics sometimes. So this bonfire here, I can activate it, and it will very quickly start melting the ice around it. So that can be useful. It's not as useful as some of the other things that we run into in the later game. We have enough gems, so now I actually want to make my way into a new area, and it looks like we're only seeing living caves, so I'm going to kind of stand my ground for a while and just fight off these monsters until I can make my way out of here and try to find... So here's a crossroads, so we can melt our way through this wall. And this will take us to many of the other areas, so we can head out into the desert, for instance, and gather up some spice. The desert is one of the easiest areas. It's very similar to the icy land, but you cannot get rid of walls, you can't get through walls, and there are the sandworms that pose a bit of a hazard, but are not very much of a hazard. And so they're pretty easy to get away from. The desert man is a very basic enemy, like the ones that you see in the icy land, and they're very easy to fight, but they can kind of swarm you. They tend to come in groups. Now I'm going to try and make my way over this way. I thought I saw an exit. Yeah, there's an exit over here. And that will take us into the jungle, which is the hardest, in my opinion, of the early worlds, because of these ivies that grow kind of in ways that are very difficult to manage. And they can grow very big, and they can sometimes grow very quickly. And you have to hack your way to the heart of them to find gems. Sometimes you'll see gems just laying around. Like, I believe I see one over this way that I can just pick up off the ground. But the easiest way to find gems in this area is to hack to the middle of these ivies. But it's also very easy to get swarmed by the ivies. And so now I'm actually having trouble getting into the heart of this one because I didn't notice when you get two next to each other like this, they'll have fewer branches, and so they'll grow much more quickly than the ones that are kind of off on their own like this. And so that makes them much more difficult to fight. And we have 5 gems from this area. These eagles move very fast. They move twice as fast as you, but they can only attack on their first move. And so you can actually kite them in much the same way. And there, I ended up kind of going into a situation without scoping it out first, and I ended up getting swarmed by the ivy. So that's Hyper Rogue. There's still a lot more that I want to show you. There's still more endgame content, more areas. We haven't even made it into the endgame yet, so I definitely want to show you that in the future. I really like this game. It's currently available on Steam for $1, and there's also a free version that has fewer areas and less endgame content. But if you want to check it out, there's also an Android version, which is how I discovered this game. So I really recommend that you check it out. I really enjoy it, and I hope to come back to it in the future. So thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.